Here is a fact that should not be true. The human beings with the least privacy who ever lived, no walls, no doors, no bedroom, no bathroom, not 1 square foot of the planet that was theirs, were better at privacy than you are. Right now, you've got a lock on your door and a password on your phone, and you are still worse at this than someone who spent every night of their life pressed shoulder to shoulder with 30 other people 300,000 years ago. That sounds impossible. It isn't. Privacy was never the thing you think it is, wait. And the people around that fire understood something about it we've very nearly forgotten. Give me the next few minutes, and I'll show you what they knew, and what you quietly lost the day someone first stacked a wall. Start with the world that built that reflex. For almost the entire run of our species, long before anyone planted a seed, you lived in a group of maybe 20 to 50 people, and you did not get a break from them. Not one. You woke up to the same faces you fell asleep next to. You ate close enough to touch your mother, your rivals, and the person you were quietly in love with. All at the same fire. Every argument had witnesses. Every bad mood had an audience. If 2 people slipped off into the dark, the whole camp did the math. There was no back room to cool off in, no version of you the group hadn't already met. And here's what should stop you. Those people weren't miserable, or primitive, or waiting around to be rescued by architecture. They were running one of the most sophisticated privacy systems humans have ever built. You just can't see it, because it was never made of stone. So let's kill the assumption underneath the whole question. When you picture privacy, you picture a place, a door that shuts, a room with your name on it. But that's not what privacy is. That's just the most recent and most expensive way we've ever found to get it. Take the walls away, and privacy turns into something much simpler and much older. A boundary everyone around you agrees not to cross, even when crossing it would take nothing at all. Not a barrier that stops people, a line they choose to respect. And the second you see it that way, the ancient world flips. It stops looking like a place with no privacy and starts looking like a place absolutely soaked in it. You just have to know where they kept it. Here's where they kept it in each other's eyes. In a camp with no corners, the group ran a silent agreement to go blind on cue. Somebody starts crying quietly by the fire, and everybody suddenly finds something fascinating to study in the flames. Because looking away is the only privacy they have to give. 2 people leave the circle and come back an hour later, and the entire camp's memory develops a convenient hole shaped exactly like them. A hard conversation happens in low voices, and the people close enough to catch every word agree, without ever discussing it, that they heard nothing. That was the machine. Privacy without walls wasn't built out of distance. It was built out of everyone deciding, minute by minute, what they'd pretend they hadn't seen. And it was enforced harder than any lock. The person who broke it, who stared, who repeated the quiet thing out loud, wasn't just being rude. They were a threat to the one system the whole group ran on to survive, getting along. Nosiness could get you frozen out, and out there, frozen out meant dead. Now push on the obvious hole in all of this, because some things you cannot fix by looking away. And the least private activity in the ancient world was also its most dangerous. 2 people pairing off. That was never just a private moment with no audience. It was information, and it was radioactive. Who was close to whom decided alliances, who'd have your back in a fight, and who quietly wouldn't. So couples didn't slip into the dark only for comfort. They needed to control what the group knew because the wrong people learning it at the wrong moment could tip the balance of the whole camp. And this is the part we get backwards. We assume they hid it out of shyness. They hid it out of strategy. A secret about who you wanted wasn't embarrassing. It was leverage. And leverage is the one thing you never hand to people who might someday use it on you. Keeping it behind your teeth wasn't modesty. It was you protecting your position in the only way a person with no door ever could. And that muscle, the one that keeps a thing behind your teeth, is the real answer to the question this whole video is built on. If there's no door to close, what are you closing? You're closing the distance between what you feel and what you let anyone see. You're terrified in the middle of a hunt, but the group moves on the nerve of its steadiest face. So you swallow it and keep your hands still. You want something you are absolutely not allowed to want, a bigger share, someone else's partner, and you can't let a flicker of it reach your eyes. You're grieving so hard you can barely stand up, but there's a child to feed at first light, so you fold the grief small and carry it somewhere no one can see. Feeling one thing and showing another on purpose all day, that's a real skill, and psychologists have a name for it: impression management. The constant work of steering the version of you that other people get to meet. For them, it ran every waking second because a person who couldn't do it, who spilled every feeling straight onto their face, was a liability the group couldn't always carry. So they built somewhere to keep the rest. Not a room out of stone, a room in the few inches behind their own face. And they lived in it, quietly, for their entire lives. So what changed? One thing. Somewhere around 10 to 12,000 years ago, we started to farm. To grow food, you have to stop moving. And people who stop moving start to build things that last. Things with foundations and corners and a hard edge. And for the first time in the story of our species, a person could set a real wall between their own body and every other body on Earth. For 300,000 years, the most private thing you owned was the space behind your face. And then, almost overnight on the timescale of our history, you could own a space behind a door. You could be not just unwatched, but physically out of reach, gone in a way no ancestor of yours had ever managed to be. It felt like a gift. In a lot of ways it was. But every gift comes with a receipt, and nobody bothered to read this one. Here's what the receipt said. When privacy lived behind your face, you had to make it new every single day. It was a practice, like a language. Stop speaking it, and it goes quiet in your mouth. Walls did something sneaky. They turned privacy into a thing you could buy once and then never think about again. Why work to manage what people know about you, when you can just shut a door and let them know nothing? And so, slowly, over 10,000 years, we got extraordinary at building walls. And quietly worse at the older skill they replaced. There's a sharper edge, too. Those walls were never handed out evenly. The powerful got more, plenty of people got none, so privacy has always been something you could afford, or couldn't. But here's the twist even the wealthy missed. They bought every wall in the world and let the other kind, the kind you can't buy, slip straight through their fingers. So here's why those 30 people beat you at this. Their privacy was never a place. It was a skill. Every waking hour, they were deciding what to let the group see and what to keep behind their own eyes, and they got so good at it that someone standing 3 feet away could know your face for 40 years and still not know half of what was behind it. Then we learned to farm, we stacked mud into walls, and privacy stopped being something you did and became something you owned. A door, a lock, a room. And the day it became a possession, we stopped practicing the skill. You have more privacy than any human in history, and less practice at it than any human in history. That's the trade. So before you click away, tell me down in the comments, when was the last time you had a thought you decided exactly 0 people were allowed to have? And honestly, how long did it survive before you handed it to someone? I actually read these. See you in the next one.